Okay, you have probably seen, heard about, know more than you want to know about the disgusting UFC fight that happened on the South Lawn of the White House on Sunday to celebrate, of course, Trump's 80th birthday. And there's a lot that has been said, there's a lot to say, but I have a couple of thoughts about things that I don't think have gotten nearly enough coverage, and there is a lot to say about it again. One of the things that struck me, having worked in the White House for two presidents, having walked these halls, first of all, every time I walk through the White House, and I think most people who've worked there would say this, you feel in awe of the building you're in, the institution you're in. Clearly, they don't feel this way. But one of the things that seems small that struck me was seeing these UFC fighters and others who are participating in this walking through the colonnade. There we are, okay? That is like a man in a version of his sweats ready for soccer practice walking down the White House colonnade. And why did this strike me? Well, because that's a historic part of the White House. I mean, you can't, yes, now this has the gold adorned that Donald Trump has added to it, which was never there before and is tacky as hell. But that is a place where historically presidents have walked between the residence, which it connects to the West Wing, where President Obama took a walk with Pope Francis on this colonnade. There, you can see it there. Presidents have walked with foreign leaders on this colonnade. They've walked with their family members. There's so much history in this colonnade. And it was like dirtied by these UFC fighters in their outfits that look like soccer outfits or versions of underwear, men's diapers, depending on what they were wearing at any particular moment. So that's one thing that particularly struck me. The other thing is another part of the White House that everybody saw was the diplomatic room. The diplomatic room is another room that has a ton of White House history. I mean, first of all, it is the place, you can see it there, where every president waits before they go out and board Marine One when they are going on a trip. And they take Marine One from the White House to Andrews Air Force Base. Lots of history. But well beyond that, there have been tons of announcements that have been made in that room. There have been major moments of history. I mean, FDR used to record his fireside chats in the diplomatic room. Just think about how far or how low we have gone from FDR recording his fireside chats in the diplomatic room to now grown men in a version of their dressed up diapers, underwear, soccer outfits, traipsing through that room to an event on the South Lawn. That is one of the things that struck me. Okay, another thing that struck me, and I'm sure this struck you too, were the people who were in freaking attendance. And I'm not just talking about Nate Bargatze, who I very, very much like, the comedian, but who certainly has gotten a lot of well-deserved flack for attending this. I'm also really talking about Mark Zuckerberg, David Ellison. Not surprising at all that they were there, but they were there to kiss ass to Donald Trump so that he can keep giving them what they want. And they look pathetic and sad, and as they and other versions of them, other tech type bros looked around the inauguration, they are also representative. I mean, their formats, Facebook, of course, everything David Ellison and the Ellisons now control, from Paramount to soon to be CNN to CBS, they control a huge amount of information the American public gets. Paramount Plus was airing the UFC fight. So to celebrate Trump's birthday, or the 250th, but really Trump's birthday, you had to pay a subscription to get access to it. And of course, David Ellison was there. And they need to keep Trump happy because they need to keep ensuring that he's making sure they get to do what they want. But that struck me. Also, the fact that nearly everything that could be nailed down was sponsored by something. World Liberty Financial, beer, all sorts of things. It was like the entire White House property was for freaking sale, which is disgusting in its own right. And then there, of course, and this has gotten a lot of well-deserved attention and a bad kind of attention, Josh Hokett, however you pronounce that guy's name, the UFC fighter who decided to disparage Michelle Obama. Now, to state the obvious, it is disgusting. It is racist. It's repulsive. It's like, how could you say that about a former first lady? It is also, and it should be seen this way, absolutely freaking pathetic. And it's also pathetic that Donald Trump did not disavow these comments. Is it surprising? No, it's absolutely not surprising. Of course, it's not surprising. This is a president who depicted the former president and his wife as monkeys not that long ago, okay? Of course, he's not going to disavow them. Even Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports, not exactly a card-holding liberal, thinks he should disavow it, right? But of course he's not going to, because if he disavows it, if he tells his people it's not acceptable, then what does it mean? It elevates people who are better than him. And the Obamas are definitely better than him. And you know what I'm sure is driving him absolutely freaking crazy right now? That the Obama Library is going to open on Thursday. And between that and the parade for the Knicks, that is going to take up all the oxygen, all positive vibes around that thing. Mayor Mamdani is going to get lots of press. Barack Obama is going to get lots of press. And guess who's little sad guy who barely has an Iran deal? It's not even a deal, Donald Trump. But here's the thing. The man still lives in his own version of an alternate universe. So despite all of this, I thought it was quite telling what he said to the president of France. I just got to play it for you.
Then we had a really exciting, I think maybe one of the most incredible evenings in the history of the White House. We had an evening last night with the fighters, and I was very happy. I called last night, very late last night, to congratulate you, because in the heavyweight division, a French fighter won. I don't know, is that maybe more important than the World Cup? To some people it might be. To some people it might be. You have a good team in the World Cup.
Could you see President France there? Like, no, it's not freaking more important than the World Cup. Some weird fight you had on your South Lawn. The World Cup is enormous, including in France, and they have a good team. So no, Donald Trump, I don't think anyone would say that the spectacle you put on for your birthday on the South Lawn is more important than the World Cup, which most Americans, including my entire household, are obsessed with right now. Okay, speaking of things happening with Trump and just the entire White House, over the weekend, the administration announced, I'm not even going to call it a deal because it is not a deal. I have been part of an actual Iran nuclear deal, which was hundreds of pages. It required years of negotiations, tons of experts and expertise, intricacies and specificities. And at the time, it was done with what was called the P5+1. So a bunch of other countries, including Russia and China. Okay. That's what I was a part of. That's what a lot of people were a part of. This is a page and a half. Okay. A page and a half is shorter than most people's resumes, unless they're 25. It is that long. And we won't know more details until Friday, according to Trump. Why? Because he's at the G7. He probably doesn't want to answer questions. He doesn't want them to make fun of him. They all already don't like him, okay? Will we get more details on Friday? I'm not holding my breath. You should not hold your breath either. But the thing about this that is kind of interesting to watch is they have made J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, essentially the face of this fake non-deal deal, or whatever it is, page and a half document. And they have put him out on Sunday shows. He went out and did interviews this weekend. He was on CBS on Monday. And on CBS on Monday, he talked about how Iran could have access to a $300 billion fund to rebuild their country. According to Vance, now this would be funded by the private sector and maybe the Gulf countries. I would just note as a sidebar, if that just sounds like, oh, thank God, it's not taxpayer money. Here's the thing. Private sector funded, we've seen what they've done before. If you are a CEO and you want to do a favor for this administration, do you think you're going to contribute to this version of a slush fund that they are doing for Iran? Probably, right? Why wouldn't you if it pleases Trump? So that's a risk. We'll see if it actually even happens. Okay, but let's put that aside. $300 billion. Now, this Trump went out and then said it was million. He was confused. It's definitely billion. It's actually billion. Now, both of them, though, at the same time are trying very hard, and they have been for some time, to distance themselves from what Trump had to say in March about Obama giving the Iranians $1.7 billion. And that $1.7 billion was actually Iranian money. It was all this legal settlement. It was done around the same time that a number of Americans who were held were released from Iran. It was, I can tell you, controversial at the time. I was certainly in the government at the time, but Trump has been obsessed with this.
Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there, loaded with cash, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think they had two of them loaded. They took the seats out and they put cash. And it was so much that there wasn't a bank in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C. that had any money left. They stripped them of all their money, put it into place, sent it to Iran almost as ransom. That's not going to happen with Trump.
I mean, first of all, as you can tell by the gold adorned decorations, that was actually from March of this year. It was about the 2015 pellets of cash, as Trump defined it. Now, here's the thing. The reason people expressed concerns about it at the time, even though it was Iranian money they were getting back in a legal settlement, was because the Iranian regime were not people to be trusted, which we said at the time. It still remains the case. And there was no belief at the time, nor should there be now, that if they got access to a ton of money, they would be giving that back to the Iranian people. They've made no secret about their ambitions. And so that was the concern then, and it should certainly be the concern now. When, again, let me do the math for you here, 1.7 billion back then. Now we're talking about 300 billion. So wherever it comes from, it doesn't matter. The point is the concern about what they could do with it should still be the same concern, if not multiples of that. Okay, I just want to come back to JD Vance for just a second, because one of the things that is enjoyable to watch right now is that I don't know if this is Trump's, I don't have any internal knowledge of this, and maybe we'll learn from excellent reporting at some point in time, but this feels to me that is JD Vance being pushed out there to be the face of the Iran deal, or 1.5 pager, as Trump's way of tanking his candidacy for the presidency ever. Because there's no details here. The war is hugely unpopular. Gas prices are still going to be high for a while. JD Vance looks like an absolute buffoon when he talks about this. I mean, it is, maybe he doesn't have a lot to go with, but he doesn't exactly look like he has a strong grasp on global issues and on foreign policy. He looks actually quite gullible, and he's out there doing interview after interview after interview. And maybe we will learn more, because we've also in the past couple days, weeks, even days and weeks, we've learned more about Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's book, and they have recordings from inside the Situation Room, reportedly from this. So who knows what we will learn about the discussions around this, about JD Vance's lack of knowledge, about Donald Trump's lack of knowledge. But the thing, just as a note, that I find so interesting about the recordings that Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman have is that it's very hard. I mean, when you go into the Situation Room for a meeting, it's one of the most secure places to have a conversation. That's why there are conversations about all sorts of international events happening in there. It is, you're supposed to, it's not the honor system, but they do ask you, if they see your Apple Watch, they make you take your Apple Watch off. You're supposed to check all technology into a little cubby before you go into the room. Now, have there been people who have violated that? Sure. See Omarosa, who took a recording pen in there, this was reported, so that she could record her boss, John Kelly, at the time when he fired her. Okay, are there incidents? Sure. But in normal cases, they didn't even, and actually the guy who used to run the Situation Room did a whole thread about this, how even when they were having discussions about Osama bin Laden, they didn't even record in the Situation Room those conversations because things can be so sensitive. But the fact that Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan have information, or they reportedly have recordings from the Situation Room, tells you a couple things. It tells you that people who are in close enough proximity or close enough of a circle feel concerned enough that they want to share this information with reporters, and that they were willing to risk recording things in the Situation Room, which I have no doubt would put people's security clearance at risk to some degree, at least warrant a discussion, a demerit, whatever it may be in the process. But people seem willing to do that. Maybe they still are willing, and also willing to give it to the press. And that was telling to me. Okay. America 250, this UFC fight, just to come back to where we started, is all it was supposed to be about. America 250. We know it's not. It was on Trump's 80th birthday. But there are a couple of updates that I just want to tell you about as a resident of Washington, D.C. Someone, it's quite, I mean, the ongoing reflecting pool is really quite something. Now, reflecting pool is currently green. You know why? Because it is full of algae. It's completely full of algae. Look at it, right? I guess somewhere underneath there is the American flag blue color. Somewhere. Remember, this was such a desperate situation. It was such an emergency. They had to do a no-bid contract with Trump's pool guy, who turns out he didn't actually know what he was doing. But that's what the reflecting pool looks like. The pool's low step, just so you know, as green as it is only 2.5 feet. And I can contest it's been quite hot in Washington, D.C. Just anyone visiting, that's not what it's supposed to look like. It certainly doesn't look American flag blue, and July 4th is only a couple of weeks away. Okay, one other little update. Remember that Qatari jet that the Qataris gifted Trump? Well, since the last time, at least I've talked about it. Maybe I've talked about it in between. I don't know. It has now been retrofitted, which cost a gargantuan amount of taxpayer money. And then now it's part of the president's fleet. And Trump is now considering taking his first ride on it to Mount Rushmore. Guess what? July 4th weekend on July 3rd. So there is that.